Decision 2004, Latinos in the race for the White House. President George W. Bush, Senator John Kerry. How are they connecting with America's largest minority group? Latino voters could decide the presidency in the upcoming election if they choose to vote. Join us as NBC explores Decision 2004, the Latino Vote.
Welcome to this NBC News special, Decision 2004, the Latino Vote. I'm Natalie Morales.
And I'm Chris Matthews. It's the ethnic group that's changing the face of America. And it's not just society and culture, but it's at the ballot box. Latinos are poised to become a decisive factor in this and future elections. What's important to Latino voters, and what are politicians doing to get their vote? In the next half hour, we will travel around the country to answer those questions. So in order to understand the political interest in this group, we first take a look at the culture and diversity of the Latino community. Here's David Cruz.
These are the faces of Latinos.
Yo soy Latina.
I am Latino.
I am Latino.
I am Latino.
The largest minority group in the United States. 39 million and still growing strong. Among them, teachers, students, store owners, workers, athletes, and artists, including acclaimed musician Carlos Santana. His music blends cultural and ethnic experiences, celebrating the rich diversity of Latinos.
Latinos son como un arco iris. They're like a rainbow. We like all kinds of colors, food, music, philosophies. Somos toda la baraja completa, no nomás una mano.
Latinos in the U.S. come from more than 20 different countries, and although the vast majority speak Spanish, there are some differences, just as English sounds different in Great Britain, Australia, or the U.S. Yet, one thing is certain, they often identify with their family's origins.
I'm from Guatemala.
From El Salvador.
Differences that are embraced and celebrated. From Mexican traditions in the streets of Los Angeles to Puerto Rican pride in New York and the Cuban Calle Ocho celebration in Miami. While it's true they're predominantly Catholic, they're also Jewish, Protestant, and Muslim, among others. And politicians are also learning now that Latinos don't vote as one. Take California's divisive driver's license bill that would give driving privileges to undocumented immigrants.
Licencias! Licencia aquí!
Critics within the community argue the licenses would reward those who had already broken the U.S. immigration laws. The bill passed last year, but then was repealed by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. A second version of the bill was vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger this year. And it's still dividing Latinos down political, economic, and generational lines. While that surprises some, others say it proves Latinos are not all alike.
I think you can't just take Latinos as this race ethnicity group. You have to also think about class, region, immigration status, as well as gender.
Gregory Rodriguez from the New American Foundation says politicians are ignoring Latinos' diversity.
What you had to do is slice it up and make distinctions between, for instance, the U.S.-born Latino population versus the foreign-born Latino population, between Mexicans and Cubans. Really, the only way to understand Latinos is to disaggregate.
How to solve a weakened economy. Immigration and education are issues where Latinos, like other Americans, disagree. But can politicians navigate through these complex waters?
As long as we take our message equally out to every neighborhood, we're very successful.
What I find is important is you find the 4 or 5 issues that everybody can agree on.
And irrespective of their political allegiance, Latinos once again have the opportunity to celebrate their individuality as voters.
I am Latino.
Yo soy Latina.
14 million Latinos will be eligible to vote in this election. And like every voter, all that's required from them is to register and to show up on Election Day. But will they participate? Here's Jackie Nesprowl.
All right, we're officially saying that Florida is too close to call because of a recall.
It was never more clear that every vote is crucial than during the 2000 presidential election. 36 days of ballot recounts and hanging chads. The U.S. Supreme Court and the heavily Latino electorate of Florida decided that George W. Bush would become the 43rd president of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
4 years later, voters must again decide who will lead the country on volatile issues like the war in Iraq, terrorism, the economy, education, and health care. The Latino vote is once again poised to become an important factor, and the candidates are well aware of this. But is it fair to call Latinos a voting bloc?
There's a certain amount of dishonesty when we talk about Latinos as a bloc. There's a certain amount of, we're faking it a little bit. Because Latinos are, there is acculturation, assimilation, whether you like it or not, does happen in America. And a third-generation Mexican-American is different than a second-generation Mexican-American, is different than a first-generation Mexican-American.
Latino turnout in the 2000 election was less than stellar. Only 45% of voting-age citizens cast ballots, falling short of the national average. But why the poor showing?
I think for the better part of our history, many Latinos felt wrongly, or in some cases rightly, that their vote didn't matter.
Former U.S. Secretary of Housing Henry Cisneros says for a long time, politicians only paid Latinos lip service.
You can't blame people for becoming cynical and turned off to the process. But I think that's changing.
So do Latinos now believe their vote counts?
You have to believe that your vote counts. You have to make a difference.
Empowering voters is a challenge. Go back 30 years to the Chicano power movement. Protests and marches demanded Latino presence in politics. Grassroots groups like Southwest Voter Registration and Education Project took the lead to educate and register voters. But there were obstacles.
There was a conquering of personal fear that had to be undergone. Part of that was done by the young rebels from the civil rights movement, who were basically the kids, the first kids that went to college from the Mexican-American parents, and they led the way. It was really a youth-driven movement at that time.
This year, Southwest Voter would like 10 million Latinos registered, up from 7.5 million in the last presidential election. To meet the goal, national workshops called the Latino Academy train volunteers to collect registrations.
There's a strategy to finding the volunteers, to finding the sites where they're going to go register. Each group has their own goal that they're going to be registering voters throughout the communities.
The Constitution and laws of the United States of America.
Citizenship is also critical to strengthening Latino power. About 40% of voting-age Latinos in the United States are not citizens. This is Sandra Arevalo. Born in El Salvador, her U.S. citizenship was granted because of her military service.
I'm in the military, and not being a citizen, I don't get to vote, and it affects me. It affects whether I get deployed, whether I don't get deployed. So I want to be heard, and I want my voice to be heard. I want to vote.
Currently, there are 25 Latinos in Congress and none in the Senate. Will this lack of representation motivate Latinos to vote?
Your vote is your voice. And without that, they can't take that away. They may strip you of everything else, but if you vote, you've got to. And they've got to listen to that person. But if not, they ignore us.
Listening to that unique voice seems to be key to understanding the specific needs of Latinos. When we come back, we'll take a close look at the issues Latinos care about most and how winning their vote could decide who will lead the country the next 4 years.